Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play, where we're doing our final thoughts on Brass Birmingham. We've just played the game. I hope that you've joined us for that playthrough and that you've enjoyed it. But if you're just joining us for the first time, it's an economic management game set in the Industrial Revolution in England, where you're managing monies and building things on a board.
Correct.
Developing technologies and creating links, and it's a very interesting economic game in the way everything kind of interworks, and you're all, every time you want to do something to help yourself, you kind of have to help everyone else as well. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, or you try to avoid helping them, you'll kind of shoot yourself in the foot, which I think is something that you really like about it.
Yes, I think that's my favourite thing about it. It's got probably the best player interaction of any economic game I've ever played.
High praise?
I don't know how many highbrow economic games have.
I did kind of put a question mark on the end there.
No, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think. No, actually, no. I've probably shortchanged it. I think it's got the best player interaction of any game. Period.
Mm.
There is. I don't think any game does player interaction better because it's a competitive game where you kind of have to cooperate. Like, you know, it's like when you took my beer barrel I wanted, but actually that was good because I got points out of it for nothing, you know, essentially. I just, using each other's resources is just, I'm not sure I don't know how to articulate how amazing a design that I think that is. Mm-hmm. It's stupendous. I think on paper, this has to be one of the best games ever made. Sure, like I'm not saying I'm not saying it would necessarily even be in my top 10 games of all time. Possibly wouldn't be actually, but I think just as a sheer fait accompli of design, this is perfect.
I was about to jump in and say, you know, much like, I mean, I find Martin Wallace games, which this is based on his design, and he also designed this with two other people, but whose names I've forgotten. So if someone could check that for me real quick, that'd be great. Because credit where credit's due. But I find that his designs are mechanically...
Gavin Brown and Matt Tolman.
Thank you, Gavin and Matt. So I find that the mechanics in his designs are always very... feel good, you know. I never get sort of mad about the mechanics in his designs, or I never find them frustrating. I always find them very satisfying and very rewarding. Sometimes I find they fall apart when it comes to sort of theme and engagement because they're almost too mechanical. Mm-hmm. But this one I really liked. I thought that I'm not particularly interested in the Industrial Revolution. I'm not interested in it. It's just, it's not a theme that reaches out and grabs me straight away.
Yes.
And I found myself quite engaged in this. I really felt like we were competing for resources in space. Because one of the things that's really great about the way it forces you to use each other's resources is suddenly you actually, if you start building things because you want the resources, you've got to consider how to prevent other people from taking them first.
Yeah. I mean, you can try and be totally self-sufficient, but people will inevitably end up using your stuff, and even if they didn't, you will not win this game without that interaction, which I think is actually quite thematically grounded, and it's really mechanically sound.
I particularly liked how I almost always wanted you guys to grab my coal, but I always wanted your hands off my beer barrels. You know? I was like, get away, I need that. You know, that was really cool.
That balance between wanting to cooperate and also kind of wanting people to fuck off a bit, you know, is so clever.
What did you think?
I really liked it.
Yeah.
When you think about I think you've just mentioned this just now, but when you think about the concept, it's like, oh, let's go to industrial England and try and build industries with one another. The North. This is the Midlands, this is not the North. Just saying. But it comes across as really dry, and when I was telling my friends I was coming here to play this, they were like, what?
Yeah.
Why?
That sounds nerdy.
That sounds like dull. But it actually works really well. I find myself as a bit of a history buff, like being quite interested in the theme anyway.
Theme's a funny thing in board games, though, isn't it? Because it's like I've talked about several times about how one of my favorite games is Rococo, and it's got a theme I would have thought I would have tested, and this is a theme I would have thought I'd find very boring. But it's kind of like if you go to a movie, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a movie that has on paper a terrible You don't, if you went to see a film or read a book that was set in during this time period, what Jane Austen, I suppose, would be set in this time period, wouldn't it? I should know that. Yeah, it would be within that century. Yeah, within that century. You don't pitch Pride and Prejudice as it's a story of the upper middle classes going to balls in Regency England.
Yeah.
But that is how you pitch it in a board game, because it's kind of how you have to. Yeah. You pitch it about the romance of it and everything, right? It's kind of, board games have a different pitch almost in terms of theme.
Yeah.
You have to be, you need to be a bit more open to funkier themes, because you experience the theme in a more interactive way.
Yeah.
Therefore, it needs a less specific hook, I feel.
Mm-hmm. But I feel there's a lot of things in this that I like that makes it... I think it runs the risk of being very AP, which I suffered from a lot in the game. But I like how, like you say, how you've got to use one another, and how you can essentially block one another as well. It's like I was pretty much, in the playthrough that we did, sort of like outcast from up here, but that's due to my bad play rather than anything. But I like how that's quite how you've got to use that competitive nature, but also you still need one another, and how
you can use the wild cards and stuff.
And that's it. So I totally forgot about doing that.
But it's less efficient, because then you waste actions, and as we experienced certainly in the second half of the game, there's not enough turns time to do really what you want.
And I like how you've got to be efficient with your actions as well, because the amount of money that you spend determines turn order.
And that can be crucial
in enabling you to do what you want.
Usually it's not a big deal, but then when it is, it's really a big deal. It's
because
like so
these
annoying.
guys placed things on their turn before me on both, and it's because I was so far down the track towards the start of the round, and that is it's so many different things you've got to try and think about, but it's quite cleverly done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like the sort of the technology board here, and I like the little economic thing here. What I found actually, which was really interesting, was I wanted to get coal and iron off the board, certainly, especially in the railroad era, and but I'd also I wanted to get this 20-point pottery thing, which I didn't get close to, but they all cost coal.
I didn't even bother trying.
And I was like, damn it, the coal! I need the coal! You know. Yeah, I did not go in for the whole sort of manufacturing side very much. If you can see, it's pretty much all resources on my side. But then I just used my great finances.
You did a bit of everything, though. I ignored two things entirely.
But then our score is not far off. I mean, 182 to 164.
No, absolutely.
What is that? That's like a 16-point difference, which is like 10%, which is not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have big scores are. It's very small.
So the important question, I think, because I get the impression that we all liked this.
Yeah, hugely. Yeah.
And I would happily play this again. Honestly, like I would love to play this 4-player. I think it'd be great. Which is not common. Like usually, really dry economic games don't scale up very well. But I like the pace of the game. I do reckon that it could become quite AP. I think that
as a second era proved, it's not. Which was my memory. It's not that long. It's not crazy long.
No, it's not crazy long.
It's a good, it's a sit down play for 2 hours game.
Yeah, it's a good chunky 2 hours.
It's not massive time sink.
But it's not a slow burn. You know, it's like it's quite a clip 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know. But obviously this came out as a sort of a redo of the original Brass alongside Brass Lancashire, which is much truer to the original.
It is the original.
It is the original.
Yeah, with very minor changes.
But a nice up production.
Oh, hugely.
Hugely up in the production. Yeah, I
haven't used the original board, actually.
I played the original about 10 years ago, and it was...
No.
It is very basic looking game.
Yeah,
it's really funny. It's incredible how many improvements they've made to it. But so you've played Brass Lancashire, which is the second edition of the original. How do you think this compares? Because a lot of people I've seen online, when someone says, should I get Birmingham or should I get Lancashire? A lot of the board game people come out of the woodwork and go, get both, obviously.
Right. Maybe those people know more than I do, or maybe they're Brass aficionados, which I'm not, but I don't know why this game exists.
You don't know why Birmingham exists?
Yeah, there's no reason for it to exist at all.
It's very similar.
It's the same bloody game.
We did notice some changes.
But the changes are very minor and inconsequential. So one of the main changes is that in the original, you just play, if you want to do a wild action, you just play 2 cards, and you get to do anything you want basically. So you just do 1 action for that turn instead of 2. But it's a wild action, and you spend your 2 cards. In this, they make you spend a card and then discard 2 additional cards to get 2 wild cards. That is needlessly fiddly.
Well,
and the only thing it achieves is it means you have to prepare yourself to do a wild action.
But what? Well, yeah. So it has two
signpost
sort of, I mean, arguably significant changes. One is that you
signpost.
you waste an action doing it. I say waste.
But you always waste an action. It always costs 2 actions to do a wild action. It's just that you didn't have to take new cards in your hand and spend them after. It was
okay. But what the other thing it does is it prevents you from doing wilds back to back.
No, you still can't do wilds.
Right?
Because no.
Well, no, because if you use your wild location, you cannot then use another wild location until you've used your wild manufacturing card.
Yes.
Because you can't do the scout action while you have a wild card in hand.
From my experience, there's no point. There's no point to that minor change.
I appreciate that, and I feel like in gameplay you're probably right, but I feel like Martin Wallace must have a reason for that, or Gavin or Matt.
I imagine if it was Gavin or Matt, then it's not really.
Where are they from?
I don't know who they are. I'm so sorry.
Maybe they just wanted to do one of their. Maybe one's from Lancashire and one's from the West Midlands, and so they wanted a game each.
So the other change is like, I mean, something I really a change I did that I originally I thought that's really weird why they do that, and then by the end of it I understood that it kind of, I thought it was a bigger change than it is. Basically, there's no beer in the original. Instead, you actually build docks. And you can sell to each other's docks. So I can sell. So you have to sell. You have to sell to a market. So
like these ones.
Yeah. Well, so I can sell my cotton. There is only cotton. There's no manufacturing. There's no pottery. It's just cotton. So you sell cotton to docks. So I can sell my cotton to my dock ideally because I flip both, right? Or I could sell my cotton to your dock and give you a flip and give myself a flip. And they've completely removed that. And instead, the equivalent of it is basically the beer that. You're not selling to the brewery, but you need the brewery to sell. Yeah. Right? Why? Why not just leave it with the docks? Why do they need to do that? It's just pointless. If the beer serves identical function to the goddamn docks.
Well, it's because Birmingham is not near the coast, and Lancashire is.
But that's not sufficient reason to design this damn thing. I don't understand why this exists.
But the cotton goes to the docks in Lancashire.
Yeah.
But in this...
But you can also sell to the distant cotton market, which has a slight push-your-luck element to it, if you really don't want to sell to your opponent's docks. But generally speaking, or if all docks are being taken, like towards the end of an area, you might have to do it. But in general, speaking, I would just say sell to your opponent's docks.
But they don't close off the docks in this, so you can always sell. It's just you need to make sure the beer's available. So what they've done is they've added in like...
No, they haven't added anything. They've replaced docks with beer. That's all.
No, but what I mean is they've also added in 2 different types of goods.
But why? Exactly why?
Well, do you think that
they've replaced it was one extra thing I believe because there's something they've taken out shipyards. Shipyards were just pure points. They were very expensive to make, and it was very few places you could make them. In the canal areas, there's like literally 2 I think available because you couldn't reach them because the other ones because of
I feel like to an extent they replaced it with pottery.
And then in the railway era, it was a couple more available, and basically it was a huge amount of money and everything. But then when you place a shipyard, it just immediately flipped for lots of points.
But pottery,
replaced that with pottery. Basically,
this area is known for its pottery.
Yeah, no. Thematically, I understand. If you sat down to say, okay, we're going to make a Birmingham version of Lancashire, so we're going to need to make some thematic changes. For example, there's no coast, right? I get it. Yeah. I get it. I'm not questioning why they made the thematic changes for Birmingham. I'm questioning why they sat down and said we need to make a spin-off of Lancashire. Why?
I feel like the beer system feeding into these other 3 manufacturing things creates more player interaction, though. If they've taken out the thing that's exclusively points, that doesn't require player interaction, right? The shipyard.
Yeah, sure, I agree.
So the pottery is like competing now with the other 2 types, even though the pottery is pure points. It had
enough player interaction. It didn't need more.
But it got more.
But they could have just added pottery to the original when they redesigned.
So do you have a preference?
Yeah, Lancashire. I prefer Lancashire.
Yeah. Do you think that's...
Is that because it's the original? Do you reckon? Or you played it first?
I think it's probably... being honest, I think it's probably because I played it first.
Yeah, because I was thinking...
I can come up with reasons to justify it, but it's probably... Realistically, it's probably...
I mean, I know you're playing this with a bit of a tainted... with hindsight, but if you'd played Birmingham first and then played Lancashire, would it still be the same?
I think I'd probably be in reverse. Being intellectually honest, I think I would then be just the same thing in reverse.
Yeah.
But also with the knowledge that Lancashire came first, it just seems really odd. It almost seems I don't want to say this because I really love the game so much and I really liked that Kickstarter campaign, but I kind of think it almost smells of a rat that they kind of just wanted to make the other games so that they could sell both together and get more money.
I feel like
kind of smell a rat.
I feel like it's all about the economic, the intensity of the economic gamer, you know, because I know people who have many economic games and some of them do kind of feel very similar. And the nuances that differentiate them are very subtle. Yeah. You know, and I think that I would not be surprised to discover there's a lot of connoisseurs of this genre of game who feel these are very different.
I mean, I'd say brass veterans, and I did kind of give that caveat at the start. Brass veterans are maybe like, well, this is almost like a standalone expansion to them, isn't it? Like, oh wow, so because obviously the networks are different and what you can build where and is all different. Yeah. But as someone who's only played it twice before, I'm like, why? I kind of almost wish I hadn't unshrinked my brass Birmingham copy, which I never played. This isn't my copy. This is your copy.
This is my copy.
In case you didn't know. Because
I only bought Birmingham, and I bought Birmingham just because I'd heard. I think on the grapevine I'd heard it was more accessible. But I think now that you're telling me that, true. Yeah, I think from what you're telling me, it sounds like it's a bit more complex.
A little bit because Lancashire has one thing you sell to another thing, and it has another thing which is just points, and then it has the iron and the coal. That's it.
Whereas this is like here's three things you sell, and then they all require beer.
And using beer to sell is more complicated than selling to just to another tile. Because you're not selling to the beer tile, you're selling to this via this, which is just an extra layer of complexity. So this is absolutely not more accessible.
So I think on that point, I think the question is, do you want something that's a bit simpler, a bit more accessible? Then maybe you should get Lancashire. Whereas if you want something that maybe does have that extra sort of complexity to the selling action,
there's a tiny extra bite to this. There's a tiny extra bite to this. Even the fact that you need beer to build. I mean, in Lancashire, it's the same cost to build two, but without the beer. To build two railways. But
it's a lot more expensive to build two railways than this.
I think maybe someone designed these and then we're like, let's make a game around this.
Sell these beer barrels. But I'll tell you what's interesting is actually looking just assessing the cover art of the two boxes. I would have thought this was the simpler. For whatever reason, Lancashire's box makes
cover art.
Yeah, that's that man in the top hat.
They both look amazing.
The production value, the art, absolutely superb. I love how all of these boards, which you can't really tell from our set here, but all of these boards are double-sided. So you've got
nighttime
and daytime side on each board.
Because industry never stops.
Because the industry never stops. And so that's really cool. I really like that. The card stock is nice and thick. You know, it's not flimsy like Western Legends or something like... No, Western Legends. Architects of the West Kingdom. But everything's... And you won't... These are from the deluxe set, but everything else is retail. Michael's got it, I think.
What's that?
The box.
Yes.
But the components are all nice. I think the one thing is that we didn't have enough iron.
Yeah, that's odd. But if you bought both in the Kickstarter campaign, then you can use the iron from the other game.
I don't know. This might be upside down. It might not. It is
sideways. Rotate it 90 degrees to your left.
Look at that! It also comes with a cool inlay, but that's also from the deluxe edition.
The clay, what are they called? Clay iron clays are they called? Are really cool and really useful. I really like them. They feel a bit thematically odd.
Yeah, they really don't feel like they fit with this game at all. Because they're really reminiscent of poker and gambling, and there's no gambling in this.
100% agree.
For some reason, you just have these.
And
they sold them separately as well. So I'm telling you, man, I smell a rat. It was just looking.
I think these are kind of designed to be a luxury game component. You could easily sub these into so many other games. Yeah. If you were like, I want to use poker, like we should have played Western Legends with this.
Oh my god,
that would have been perfect.
Yeah, man,
definitely.
Wow, we missed a trick, and I blame you because you were the one that played Brass Lancashire. You didn't call it up.
Did I know you had it? Maybe I don't know if I did.
It was right there, Chris, the whole time, staring you in the face.
But like, you have so many games.
Oh, thanks, man. That's right. I try to be a curator, but it's hard. It's hard to keep a slim collection. And with that, I think we've done our best to help you.
I got one thing to add in that case. If you want to keep a slim collection, only buy one of these.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I hope we've helped you decide which of these two to get, because you absolutely don't need both.
Yeah, I think regardless of how, like I said, I mean, being actually honest, I think the only reason I prefer Lancashire is because I played it first. But I absolutely stand by my belief that you do not need both.
Yeah.
Unless you have been playing Brass for the last 10 years. In which case, you already have this.
Yeah, if you have like 200 economic board games. But and I think it's very useful to note the point about the manufacturing and the shipyards. So the selling action, the merchant action being slightly more complex than this. That's a really useful thing to know going into it. But thank you guys very much for coming with us on this Industrial Revolution adventure. And we'll be back tomorrow for something entirely different. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. And every sub helps us to continue to produce this content, which I hope you're enjoying. And, thanks very much for keeping us company. No, Jeff, you can't wave bye.
Bye!
Bye!
Bye, Jeff.
Jeff's cancelled his Patreon.